Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the 50th annual Stockman's Dinner. For the 10 people in the room who don't know who I am, I'm Dave Nichols. I had no idea a guy who made his living teaching could be this dang nervous up here on the podium. Hundreds of people could have been MC here tonight. I wish one of them would show up about now. But I'm the one that Patsy asked. And everybody that knows Patsy, she asks you to do something, you do it, right? Okay? I finally figured out part of the reason why I was so nervous. I have a new department head. He knows I might say anything at any time. I have a new dean, and I'm at the age when I'm not talking just a little nervous. I'm nervous enough to pee your pants. At my age, that gets easier every day. The big reason I'm most nervous is I hope I do honor to my great friend, Dr. Patsy Houghton. You can imagine, yes, big round of applause. Shortly after this was announced, oh, Patsy, I don't know if anyone will come. It's the biggest one of these we've ever had from all over the country. So Patsy, we proved you wrong. And it's going to be a great evening. We're going to have a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm plenty nervous about this. But in everything I do, I have a lot of support. And I have a lot of help. Now, I've not ever been really much into titles. But I got a new one a week ago. And a week ago, the title I got was Grandpa. No, don't applaud for me. I had nothing to do with this, really. But like I said, when I'm so lucky where I work, I have lots of help. I have people that make me look good. And in this grandpa gig, I have the best help possible, and that's Lois. Where's Lois at? She out in the hallway? Get Lois. Lois, come here. See, Lois has 15 of these. And we just traveled back from NCBA, and Lois is a child magnet. Little kids come up to her. She's got grandma written all over her. On the plane, people wanted to sit, little kids wanted to sit with her. So if I need help, I'm going to go see Lois. But Lois, before you step out, not only is she a great, wonderful grandmother, she's a great person that does so much for this department. And I want you all to give a big round of applause for all her work on this here night. Thank you very much. They don't come any finer than Lois Schreiner. Everybody knows Patsy's a huge Wildcat fan. And she's a huge football fan and a huge band fan. So I'd invite you at this time to stand for the playing of our national anthem by the Pride of the Wildcat Band. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Mark Gardner, who serves as LMIC president, to bring welcome to the group.
Thank you so much for all of you being here tonight. This is exciting. You know, I see some of these young people out here, and I tell them, especially you really young people, this is a night when magic happens. This is when you get to be with your family. And this is where I met my wife, Eva Marie, right here at this meeting, right here at this banquet. So it's exciting. And you talk about family, and that gets overused here sometimes. But you look at the Huskers and the Boilermakers and all the people that care in animal agriculture for the people that matter. Kansas State University is a special place. American agriculture is a special place. Enjoy the evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mark. He said he met his wife by who he was sitting by. With some of you want to get up and move now, you could. We are different here at K-State, and different in a good way. I got to thinking about the fact my career now is spanning 5 decades. Doug Dietz, I said, Doug, I'd do anything not to do this. He said, just pretend you're teaching principles of animal science. Well, I'll grade on the curve, so that'll be all right. I do want to introduce a few of our special guests. First, Dean Ernie Minton. Ernie, would you stand? Ernie? Okay. And I believe Associate Dean for Academic Programs, Dr. Don Boggs. And Associate Dean for Research, Dr. Marty Draper. I believe I saw him, Marty. Yeah, thank you all for being here. As I said, we're a family, and we celebrate together, but there are times when we have moments of sadness. And in this week, we lost one of those family members in Doris Kirchhoff. And I would ask you to keep Guy and his family in your prayers. Wonderful lady, passed away earlier this week. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dave Grieger for the invocation. Dr. Grieger and Patsy met each other when they were in graduate school together at Purdue. I'm glad Mark mentioned Boilermakers. There's quite a few of us here tonight, so we'll have a fair number of those. Dave is an outstanding teacher. He teaches farm animal repro, teaches biotechnology, teaches the palpation class, and I have the distinct pleasure of teaching the AI school class with Dave. Our students they really love hands-on courses. Of course, like AI school, they really like hands-in courses. So Dr. Grieger, please come to the mic.
Just like to read from Psalms 104, verses 13 through 15. He waters the mountains from his upper chambers. The earth is satisfied by the fruit of his work. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. Wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread that sustains his heart. Please join me in a word of prayer. Dear God, we thank you for your creation, for our families, our friends, and our friends-to-be. We pray for wisdom and guidance in being good stewards of the land, the animals, and the livelihood you have provided. As the psalmist wrote, you make grass grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. We now ask your blessing on this food and our fellowship this evening. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please continue to enjoy your dessert, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Next up on the program, it's a real pleasure for me to introduce my new boss. I'm one of the luckiest people in the world, and I know that because I've never had a bad boss. Dr. Cora and Dr. Ames put their careers on the line because they're the ones that actually hired me while Don was Australian. I think the line was, he gets back, he'll fire both of us. So I don't know how that started, but the legendary Don Good, Jack Riley, Ken Odie, Janice Swanson, Evan Tickemeyer, and now Dr. Mike Day. Dr. Mike Day joined us in August. He's a native of Missouri, grew up there, migrated, got his BS there, migrated on to Nebraska, got his master's, PhD there, and then spent a 30-year career at Ohio State University. We are so fortunate to have Dr. Day here. He's been a real pleasure to work with. I know I challenge him daily on what I might say or do. I remember a few years ago at Cattleman's Day, a lady named Rosemary Mucklow spoke. And I said, I really thought it was great. She just said what she thought. And I said, I look forward to that day. And I can say that. Nita said, I'm already there. So anyway, please welcome Mike Day.
Thanks for that, Dave. I hope I don't break your string of department heads. I'm not sure I could say that, though, about all the department heads I've had in the past, but most of them did an excellent job. I want to say it's a pleasure to be here, at this event that recognizes some of the most influential people in the industry, not just Kansas, but in the industry, and to be able to participate in it. So Tony, my wife, and I are really enjoying Manhattan. Been here since August, and they started digging the foundation on our house. So we're trying to get settled in into Manhattan and into a house. You know, I could probably just stand up here. My job is to give an update on the department. And really what I could end this and get on to the real program and just say it's been a great year for the Department of Animal Science, but I feel like I ought to pull out a few highlights. You know, the talk all around is about enrollment at universities in general. And K-State, we suffer some from the same at K-State, but our animal science degree has really held up pretty well. We peaked in number of students last year, largest department ever for the ASI degree, and then we're off about 5% this year, but we're still much more than we were back in 2010, earlier in the decade. So we'll see what the next year brings. We have great people that help us try to avoid that decline in enrollment. So we've had a great year. I want to talk just a little bit about our undergraduate program and research and extension, all three of those. Some of the highlights. You know, we're very proud of our education that we deliver, but I'm going to talk tonight just momentarily about things like undergraduate research. We have 160 students that had a meaningful undergraduate research in the last year. Those are going to become our next animal scientists. We have an internship program with about 50% of our students pursuing internships while they're here at Kansas State. And I recognize a few faces out here that have been involved in the feedlot boot camp that Carol Fike puts on. And those are those experiential kind of programs where we get people out to those industries that need our professionals in their management. One way I think we've been insulated from a decline in enrollment is the recruitment that's done by our youth program, Lexi Hayes and others. You know, we bring 1,500 to 2,000 students onto campus, high school youth onto campus for junior sheep, junior beef day last week, 615 registered participants, sweepstakes, quality assurance, all those things. And we get those students on campus, and we're recruiting for animal science, but we're recruiting for the whole university. And so those programs have served us very well. The other things that we do, research, we're up about 50% in grant dollars as compared to last year in the Department of Animal Science. And so to give you an idea of the scope, the faculty are out there earning about $5 million a year, spending a total of 16 towards research. And people around the country recognize that. We have over 10 awards that have been given in the last year for our teaching and our research by our faculty and staff. So they're recognized, their excellence is recognized. In extension, you'll see an example of that tomorrow, Cattleman's Day, but we have Swine Day. We have Dairy Days. We have a whole Stocker Day. I saw Dale here. Those are impactful programs that we put on. So those and the individual work we do has been very important. Last thing I want to mention about as a highlight is our judging teams. You know, our equine team had 2 world championships in the last year. Never been done before by any university. And a highlight of our livestock, our meats programs. We have 8 All-Americans if you combine livestock and meat judging together. Why is that important? We're always very competitive in those events, but it means we have really good students. Students are going to be leaders. They do well in the classroom. They do well judging, and so those programs are doing us very well. And that all comes back to the great people at K-State. part of the reason I wanted to be part of that. I have one more group to recognize, and that's our academic quadrathlon team. This is another event that some of you are aware of. Tests comprehensive knowledge of animal sciences. We had that competition last week here on campus, or 2 weeks ago. 16 teams participated, so that's about 64 students, and that's a kind of average year for us. The winning team went to Omaha, competed at the Midwest Animal Science meetings against 13 other teams from throughout the Midwest. The highlight of that trip for them, I think, was third in the laboratory practicum. And so that's, and as you know, a strength of K-State. We not only teach the science, we also teach the practical knowledge that those students need. So I'd like to, this program has been sponsored for 16 years by Fourth and Pomeroy up in Clay Center. And Joe Ebert, if you would come up here, we've got an award for the students on this team. Carol, would you come with him? They're gonna help us recognize the champion team. Members of the team, will you come up? Michaela Musselman from Clay Center, Katie Leibarger from Garnett, Damon Smith from Waterville, and Anna Behrens from Norwich. And those are all Kansas addresses. So we're recruiting those top students from across Kansas as well as other states. Thank you for representing us well at the Midwest Animal Science, and thanks to Fourth and Pomeroy for their support. This dinner tonight and many of the things that we do in the Department of Animal Science are supported by the Livestock and Meat Industry Council. Very important group. They're a group that serves as an advisory board for me, for the rest of the department, but they also have raised considerable funds in the past that are used to help support a lot of different things in our department, from teaching through research and through extension. So with that, I want to take this opportunity to invite Justin Jansen, he's the LMIC secretary up here, to tell us a little bit about LMIC if you're not familiar with it, and give you a slice of what this group does to help animal science. So Justin, thank you.
On behalf of LMIC, Dr. Day, we're happy to have you here. They've challenged me to do a little education tonight about LMIC, and I would venture that there's numerous people in the room that have either one, never heard of LMIC, or two, don't know what it is. And if you look on the front of your program, at the bottom, this activity was partially sponsored by LMIC tonight. If you look inside the front cover, there's a list of the current officers and board members and royal board members. Typically, people are chosen to serve about a 9-year term on the active board, and then they become royal board members. So at this point, I would like everyone in the room who's either a board member or a royal board member to stand up and be recognized. Thank you. To help educate you, some of you have not had the opportunity to attend the Animal Science Family and Friends reunion held in October. At that event, we show a little bit of video history of how LMIC got started in the first place in 1966. And just in a few seconds, Tim Carson is going to power up a video that about a 4-minute video that we'd like you to look at, and then we'll have just a closing comment after that. So Tim, if you could take care of things.
The Department of Animal Sciences and Industry at Kansas State University has a long and rich history. one written by the thousands of men and women who make up the Flying K. Each shares a love for the land and livestock and advancing the nation's noblest of callings, raising food. The Livestock and Meat Industry Council today celebrates that shared commitment across generations and honors the family and friends who continue Kansas State's legacy of excellence in animal science. For that purpose, LMIC presents the Don L. Good Impact Award. Don Good was a giant in animal science and industry, a man who dedicated more than 40 years to the university and the thousands of students who benefited from his far-reaching guidance. As a livestock judge, professor, coach, and industry leader, he portrayed a spirit of service and pioneering thought innate in his Ohio farm boy roots. These ideals served him well when he was named head of the department in 1966, the same year a devastating tornado destroyed the vast majority of its infrastructure. The Beef Barn, the Beef Teaching and Research Center, the Swine Teaching and Research Center, the Horse and Sheep Centers, the Feed Mill, the Poultry and Dairy Facilities, gone. But devastation and limited disaster funds spurred action, and Good worked with producers in the state to form the Livestock, Meat and Industry Council. Through LMIC, animal science and meat industry leaders channeled contributions to rebuild, implementing cutting-edge research facilities that form the basis of the modern-day campus and animal science advancements. Today, the Council continues to support the department's educational programs, facility enhancements, and research projects. You see, it was Don Good who believed the department should serve the state of Kansas to contribute to the larger livestock industry. Good believed in his students. He believed in Kansas State and driving both to excellence. Good was an evaluator of livestock and a builder of people. His integrity and foresight became the measure by which others would weigh their contributions. Don Good's passion inspired industry game changers.
This gives I think this video gives us all a little bit of the history and the culture of how we've evolved to being 64 years later, that we have the university and the animal science department that we all have enjoyed. If you'll again look at your program on page 15, about 4 pages from the back side, is the bylaws and essentially the mission and the purpose. And I think it's worth a minute of your life to take and read this, but the first purpose is to promote the development and growth of all segments of the livestock and meat industry. That's a pretty heavy challenge and opportunity for us. If you'll turn the page and look at the inside back cover, there's a list of the financial contributions that LMIC has been able to make as a result of what Don Good started in 1966. And if you look at the 10-year total, it totals out to just shy of $1.5 million dollars that have been spent to enhance aspects of the animal science department industry. So we would encourage you to be involved and be committed, and we welcome you to this night to honor Patsy.
Thank you, Justin. Before I go further, though, just a minute ago, special thanks to Adam Sigrid of the Cobber Mill Steakhouse for the CAB Prime Steaks. Adam, will you stand up? Those are great. Thank you so much. If you're ever in McCook, great place to eat. Well, now's the fun part. Patsy, you should be nervous. It's going to be great. First off, I get to introduce Dr. Cora. Patsy's already told us we only had so much time, and I could use all Larry's time just introducing all the jobs he's had. Probably not. No, just a minute. Dr. Larry Cora is our first speaker tonight. Dr. Cora, I don't know of anyone who has a greater understanding and breadth of the total livestock industry. A native of North Dakota, I don't probably said that the right way, Mary, close enough. Got his advanced degrees at Wyoming and Michigan State, was hired here as extension beef specialist, extension leader, had an outstanding career in extension, then he left here and went to work for NCBA, Director of Education. After a while there, he went to work for Director of Supply Development for certified Angus beef. And today, he's now an advisor to Select Sires for their Beef on Dairy program. The greatest part for me is that Larry is also a dear friend and a co-teacher of mine. We teach beef systems management. We have a lot of fun. Great class. We're not very good on technology, but we're a great class. I will tell you, this guy knows more people than I think anybody. He is probably the largest Rolodex of anyone I ever knew. For you younger people, ask your folks what a Rolodex is. Dr. Larry Cora.
My greatest fear was having the introduction, and Patsy only gave me 6 minutes, so now I'm down to 2. But it is fun to be able to talk a little bit about Patsy Houghton's career. And it's really been a tremendously remarkable career in terms of the accomplishments. You'll see a video coming up here shortly that I think really does a tremendous job of describing the skill set that she had and some of the accomplishments. So I'm just going to really cover a few additional events. But Patsy, you're the 48th recipient of this. You look through that list and you've joined a pretty impressive crowd. Many of them are here. That's a bunch of movers and shakers that have changed this cattle industry, not only in Kansas, but nationwide. You fit right in. So when Patsy asked me to share a few comments, I first of all reminded her that I think she ought to go with a younger model. That didn't work out real well, and as you'll pick up here. And so she said, by the way, I have a few things I want to instruct you on. That didn't also surprise me that I was going to get a little instruction. And so she said, I want you to follow the golden rule. And I said, what is that? And she said, keep in mind your comments will be remembered not by what you said, but rather how long it took you to say them. So I'll just kind of get right into it. So let's talk a little bit about how small-town Tipton gal gets to sitting here today and do a really quick journey of maybe some of the highlights and the relevance of these stops in terms of the achievements that she's achieved here today. Patsy, I think, would be the very first to credit Father Cliff for her early interest in the cattle industry. As many of you would remember, Cliff, one of the early Simmental breeders in Kansas, he recognized the impact Simmental would and could have in terms of the beef industry, and he raised cattle, excellent Simmental cattle. Patsy, growing up in that environment, her skills or interest in the cattle industry were honed. So it was on to Kansas State University, and then it was on to graduate, both the undergraduate and a master's degree. And then this Tipton girl took off for California. She was on the staff at Fresno State for quite a while as a lecturer and gained a reputation in terms of her skill set in the classroom. At the time she was in California, the American Simmental Association was growing by leaps and bounds, and they all decided they needed a youth director. Patsy was the perfect youth director. She had a Simmental background, an interest in working with young people, and so she was off to Bozeman, Montana. That was a time, at the time, they were really starting to form and change a lot of the junior Simmental program. And Patsy put a lot of different dimensions into that program. She really added a lot of depth, leadership things, a number of activities that really changed how the junior program was carried out. And much of that is really in place yet today and was copied by many of the breed associations. So I should probably digress just a little bit. And one of the individuals that ran the association at that time, an individual we referred to as EBP, Patsy actually called him by quite a few other names, but he was an interesting gentleman. He was an excellent businessman and had the ability to do uncanny things relative to managing budgets, and he really put the Simmental Association in an excellent position financially, could do things in terms of breed registrations. Now, one of his skills was not necessarily people management, and one of his little interesting idiosyncrasies is if board members or breeders or staff caused him a little consternation, you'd find him out in the hallway pacing, talking to himself. Now, I suspect if you're an introvert, that works really well because you can tell people what you think and they won't talk back to you. But needless to say, Patsy did cause them to carry on a few hallway conversations, which that is a true story. So it was on from Simmental to the next step, and that is graduate work, and to really get to where she wanted to be in the industry. One of the things that she felt she needed to do was complete a PhD. Good fortune took her to Purdue, and you'll meet Ron Lemonager, and Ron and Glenda are here today. Great to have you. And it was a perfect fit for Patsy. Ron was a Simmental enthusiast, a great classroom teacher, and a great researcher. And the one aspect that I think Ron in particular taught Patsy is that if you do research relevant to the beef cattle industry, it's really fun and very impactful. And I think that was one of the things that Patsy took with her as she carried out the rest of her career. So degree was complete at Purdue, and now it was time to find a paying job again. As good fortune would have it, we had moved Danny Sims from the Northwest area office. Many of you remember Danny. And under his leadership, Danny and prior to that Frank Schwartz, they had built a really excellent reputation for that beef specialist position in Northwest Kansas. And so it was time to advertise, and we got an excellent pool of applicants, probably one of the strongest we ever had, Patsy being one of them. We narrowed it down to 3 candidates. And I'd say keep in mind, at the time we sat down to make a decision, I remember him being in Dr. Good's office, and one of the uniquenesses at that time is we had never hired a female in the animal science faculty before. So Don would ask a lot of really pointed questions when you had the interview process go on. And one of the things that was we sat down and discussed Patsy, he said, and he knew the Houghton family quite well, he knew Patsy quite well, and he would ask these pointed questions, and he said, do you think she'll fit in? And I said, well, you can imagine that's exactly how it was said. I said, I think so. You know, I'd have to get Sims and Cool to clean up their vocabulary a little bit, but I think she would fit in. I think she's got a skill set that would complement everybody. And he thought a little bit, and he said, you know, and he always had interesting terms he used for things. And he said, you know, she can be a little headstrong at times. And incidentally, that is a correct statement. Can be verified by many of us. I said, you know, that actually might work to her advantage because, you know, she's going to have to face some real obstacles, and so it did. So she was off and running in terms of her career at K-State, and one of the things we do a lot of in the early days was planning and organizing for events, and we had a group like Brazel and Cool and Sims and others that really had a good feel for the cattle industry. And they would come up with topics. And this was at a time in that period when EPDs were just being launched in the industry. So these guys decided to hold a session in Great Bend, Kansas on EPDs. And it was going to be a statewide meeting. And they were talking. They said, you know, I bet you we could attract 100, 150 people to something like this. Patsy's sitting there and listening to it, and she pipes up and she said, you know, if you did that right, I think you could have 1,000 people there. Well, I'm sure one of them looked over and had said, okay, smarty pants, how are we going to do this? And she said, well, what I would do is I'd kind of, your program that you've outlined is good. I'd put a nice steak dinner afterwards, and let's invite Baxter Black. Smarty pants, and how are we going to pay for this? She said, well, I'd get sponsors, and, you know, we could charge for this, a small fee for this event. Now, that was a novel idea. You could charge for an extension activity. But anyway, so we said, you know, lady, you're just in charge. Well, you can imagine Patsy never backs off from a challenge. She latches onto this. And pretty soon the speakers were lined up, the sponsors were gathered, steaks were ordered, and basically Baxter was lined up. You'd had to live under a rock in Kansas to not know that meeting was on. And sure as heck, there were 1,000 people at this event. Probably one of the largest off-campus meetings that we ever had. Vintage Patsy. So from there, the phone rang one day. Actually, before I get to that, a lot of other activities here that I should mention. She got very heavily involved in a lot of field research studies, a lot of the AI internship programs, tried to figure out how we incorporate ultrasound in the cattle industry, and spoke all over the state to the point that a lot of people knew her quite well. So the phone rang one day, And she had said, I've got an idea. Now, when that conversation starts that way, there's two things you need, and that's kind of a full cup of coffee and a little time on your hands, because it's going to take a little time. And she said, I have this idea that basically if we would develop a custom heifer development facility and develop heifers for people and then AI them and send them back, this could be very successful. Patsy, this has been tried before and it hasn't worked real well. No, it wasn't done right. This is how it needs to be done, yada, 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 and away it went. And so the next thing we know is she's off to McCook, Nebraska, and Janet will talk a lot more about life at Heartland Cattle Company. But one of the things that I want to share in the relevance of Heartland experience is what this did is her success there gave her a national platform. All of a sudden she was speaking all over the country. Basically she was planning Cattlemen's College for NCBA and was the first recipient of the American Society of Animal Science Industry Achievement Award. Patsy all of a sudden had gained a national platform. So that was one of the key activities, and Janet will cover more details. I want to wrap up by covering maybe one other event, and that's been alluded to already, and that is, because I think this is so vintage Patsy, and that is her creativity, her generosity, and basically her taking an idea and just simply making it work. And so you already had Lois Schreiner referred to here earlier. I'll let you in a little secret on Lois. You know, guys like Odie and Day think they run the animal science department. Really, Lois runs the animal science department. That's the true part. Yeah. I agree. She is also the departmental therapist, and God only knows some of those faculty can use a little therapy. You met Grieger earlier. I think he's in there on a weekly basis, David. I'm not sure how often. You know, I know it takes a lot, so bless Lois. Well, anyway, Lois said, Patsy called. She's got an idea. No, that's not shocking. And so I said, so what's the idea? And she said, well, she thinks that if you held an event that you could invite families back for, animal science graduates, and maybe some of the friends of the department, and basically you had a fun evening where they could get together, reminisce, meet old colleagues and friends. You know, that if we could hold something like that in Manhattan, there'd be 1,000 people come to that kind of thing, that number again. And Lois said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think it's a really good idea. There will not be 1,000 people there. There could easily be 250, 300 type people. Well, Patsy quickly grabs the LMIC board members, folks like that you've met, Justin and Mark and Bill and Kelly and many others, and then enlists Angie and Lois's help. And sure in heck, there were 1,000 people at family and friends. And it's continued that size crowd since. So, I mean, to me, that's just vintage Patsy. Wrapping up completely, Patsy, I think you can rest assured that Father Cliff is up here with a big smile on your face, very proud of what his little girl has accomplished. And congratulations on a well-deserved award.
Thank you, Larry. Get my notes here. Another person who has a great deal of this success is Angie Denton. And Angie, will you stand up? Where are you? Communication Director. Angie, great addition to our deal. When we put this together, one of the concerns always does get how long it's going to take. Patsy has friends and colleagues all around the country, and you see that tonight. People have come from all over. And in order to effectively tell her story, we decided to do a video. And I invite you to watch this video that is produced by the video team at the American Angus Association and sponsored by Ringneck Ranch. Please enjoy the video.
I'm Dr. Ron Lemonacher, and I know Patsy because she was one of my early graduate students in my career. And I guess I have to say that, you know, of all the graduate students that I've had a number of really, really good ones, but Patsy is probably at the top of the list. Patsy came to me as a graduate student with some experience. She had taught at Fresno. She had been with the Simmental Association for a couple years. And one of the projects that she worked on was kind of an instrumental project. We dealt with a lot of body composition, where we did a lot of cow slaughter. And that became the foundation for the new beef NRC recommendations on the energy side of nutrition requirements. And without that data, we would have not been able to develop some of the equations that are currently being used by the industry. You know, Patsy, after she left Purdue with her PhD, she joined the extension program at Kansas State, and while she was there, she kind of developed some interest on the feedlot side, but also on this heifer development side. And she called me up one day and said, "Ron, I kind of got this idea of Heartland Cattle Company and heifer development." And I said, "Boy, that's going to be a risky deal, all right? But I really believe that the industry is ready for this." And I know she talked to a number of other people, so it wasn't just me that she talked to, but she was good at, you know, getting information that she needed to be able to make decisions.
Going back to the 1980s, I was at Colorado State University on the faculty, and my research area was beef cattle reproduction and health. I was particularly interested in the area she was starting her business, which was really a replacement heifer development business. That was a very novel business at that point in time because these kinds of businesses really didn't exist.
So I've known Patsy about 30 years. The way I got to know her is she just showed up with a couple partners here at the bank with a concept of Heartland Cattle Company. Patsy wasn't fresh out of college, but she had spent most of her career in academia at that point in time. And she had a lot of experience, but not at running a business. And she shows up on a very cold early winter day here in Red Willow County, Nebraska. And we drive out to the location at which Heartland Cattle Company was ultimately built on, and we stand on a county road. And we stare out into a cornstalk field, and we talk about this vision of having open heifers show up in a few weeks and how we're going to breed them and we're going to have customers. Started out a little bit raw, but she had a great concept, and she was willing to learn, she was willing to listen. Obviously a very intelligent lady, and she was able to grow not only professionally but also from a business perspective.
You know, I think what we've got to recognize here, that she is the first and maybe the only person to ever design a business on heifer development and breeding systems. And what I admire so much about Patsy is she said, "I can do this," and so she did it. And everybody told her that will never work.
I think Patsy's business plan was very risky, but very innovative. She has, I think, completely redefined what professional heifer development looks like in our industry, and I don't know of anybody that has been able to really replicate the business model that she has. I think it's due to a couple of things. One, she has an insane work ethic. Two, very, very intense management. And three, one of the things I admire most about Patsy is she takes a very long-term view at everything she does, whether it's designing her business model or the decisions that she makes.
In 1991, we were drafted out in Sand Hills, Nebraska. We had to make room for cattle, and so we opted to take our heifer calves to Heartland Cattle Company, which had a stellar reputation already in that young part of its life, and have been there ever since. And I think Patsy's vision was that she saw a void in the industry, and it was in heifer development, and she opted to fill it. And in typical Patsy style, she not only filled it, but she rocked it. Patsy was a woman in 1991 that was playing in a man's field. And so I think she had hurdles and barriers to clear that she probably didn't know she had to clear. But she met those things head on with grit and tenacity. She used science, she used common sense.
She literally took that business of breeding heifers, developing them right nutritionally, getting them pregnant and sending back a useful pregnant heifer. She took it to a level that had never been seen on a custom basis. And I would suggest others are trying to do that today. And they're having varying degrees of success.
The failure rate, in new startup business is gigantically high. For a female in the agricultural industry to start with a concept and to have grown it the way it is just quite miraculous.
So for her to step out and develop and build that business is really a credit, not just her skills, but her tenacity to really go build that business and stick at it and build the customers, the relationships with the customers. It's just a remarkable story, the way she built that business into a very, very successful business.
Without her dedication and her attention to detail, that thing would have never gone, okay? She hired good people that complemented her skill set, that had the same values and motivation that she had. And Heartland Cattle Company was a very, very unique business, and she's what made it work. A lot of people have tried and have never been able to duplicate it.
I think the thing that sets Patsy apart is Simon Sinek's phrase, leaders eat last. Well before Simon Sinek coined that phrase, Patsy lived it. And so if you looked at how she went to work every day at Heartland Cattle Company, she was the first one to work and the last one to eat. And I think that leadership skill really defined her success.
She's smart, okay? And so she could see the future. She had a vision for building this kind of business. She knew the kinds of people she needed to work with and build customers in that kind of business. And then she really had the courage to go out and step out there and start that business, and then the willpower to sustain it. And it was not easy. There was a lot of tough years in there. She was early in building that business.
Some of the people that are going to listen to this video know kind of all the history of Heartland Cattle Company. And she did some things that to make other people's lives intact, stay intact, and be successful at a very big personal sacrifice from her side. She's a very special lady.
My oldest son, Jed, interned at Patsy's. When it was time to find a place for him to follow somebody around at a young age, she was an easy choice. I had a daughter who had an online meat company, and I can't tell you what a cheerleader Patsy was for Hannah. She's just been so supportive of everything our family's ever done, and especially the young people in the world. Patsy's just a #1 cheerleader and a mentor and a super guide for a lot of young minds out there. Dedication,
Hard work. I would joke with her a little bit that she's a little bit stubborn from time to time. She doesn't want to lose. She has a huge competitive spirit. The ability to learn, the desire to learn, the desire to win. She also likes people to be part of an extended family. And so she treats people the way she would like to be treated, and I think that's a big part of her success.
So she's more than just a professional colleague. She's actually a very good friend. She's just a wonderful person, and I'm so delighted she's being recognized with the Stockman of the Year award.
I think Patsy is deserving of the Stockman of the Year award because she's been a pioneer, and done some things that many of us didn't think possible. It was high risk, and she took the plunge, she did the risk.
She's changed an industry. She's taken heifer development and taken it to a new level. And more than that, it's who Patsy is as a person. From a Cornhusker to a Wildcat, I can tell you that Tom Osborne would have been really proud to have somebody with the grit and the tenacity and the work ethic that Patsy Houghton had on his team anytime. And that's a pretty high compliment.
Again, thanks to the American Ag Association, Ringneck Ranch, Keith and Deb Houghton. Several of these speakers in attendance, in addition to Ken and Mark, joined us here this evening, and I'd like to recognize those. Jerry Keneally and his wife Sharon. Jerry, would you stand up? Whitman, Nebraska. Lorna Marshall. Lorna is here. Lorna. Brian Ash from McCook. My dear friend, fellow Boilermaker, Dr. Ron Lemonager and his wife, Glenda. Thank you all for coming. Our next speaker probably knows Patsy as well as anybody. What would your employees say about you? Janet Rippey worked for Patsy for 25 years. Told me last night she'd bred over 20,000 cows. That's a lot of cows. She is a fellow Hoosier. She's a native of Warsaw, Indiana. Purdue grad, another Boilermaker tonight. She came to Kansas State. I first met Janet when she came to K-State to work on a master's with Dr. Ernie Minton in beef heifer development. She joined Heartland Cattle Company and was there and was crucial to the success of their program. Currently, since Heartland is no longer, she's developed her own business, a company called Business Solutions in McCook. Please welcome Janet Rippey to the stage. There you are. I was looking where you were.
Thank you, Dave. I don't know about Patsy, but I'm kind of overwhelmed at the number of people that I've seen here tonight. I knew a lot of them were coming, but there's quite a few surprises of people that have Heartland connections. It's just a tribute to how much people love Patsy. And I know all of you probably could stand up here and give your own tributes and do a great job too. So I'm really honored to be the person that's Patsy has chosen to represent Heartland Cattle and kind of do that side of her history. And as Dave said, I have had the pleasure of working with Patsy for over 25 years. And it's truly an honor just to be here tonight. For the person who's been my boss and my mentor, she's been an inspiration. I didn't think this would be this hard. And most of all, she's been a really good friend. So, you know, working with Patsy, she gave me a lot of tough assignments over the years, and I think I did pretty okay most of the time. But perhaps the hardest one of all is when she said, I need you to get up there and I need you to summarize the entire history of Heartland Cattle Company, and I need you to do it in 5 to 8 minutes. And I'm like, I'm out. I don't know what to do. So I don't think there are adequate words to do it justice, but I'm going to do my best to share with you just a little bit about what I believe made Heartland the success that it was. I can tell you when Patsy first found out she was getting this award, she called me up and she was so excited and she was so proud. I think especially because it was coming from her beloved K-State, because we all know Patsy bleeds really purple. And so even though she was so proud of this award, true to Patsy form, she was so humble, and she was pretty insistent that the award was really about Heartland Cattle Company and the impact that it had on the beef industry, and much less about her as an individual. So I'm guessing a lot of you guys know her pretty well, and you know that you don't argue with Patsy, right? And if you do, you're probably not going to win. So I said, okay, Patsy, I'll make it about Heartland, you know. And so as I thought about it, it didn't take long to figure out that Patsy and Heartland are really one and the same, right? So we can all agree that Heartland wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Patsy. And likewise, I would argue that Patsy wouldn't be the person she is today without her experiences at Heartland. So for me, they're synonymous, and there's no way to really separate those two things. So I'm just going to do my best to share a little bit about Heartland, but more importantly, what it was like to work at such an extraordinary facility with an even more extraordinary leader. A behind-the-scenes tour, if you will, about the unique management style and the failure is not an option attitude that led us collectively as a team to success over the years. Now, if you've ever had the opportunity to tour Heartland, you probably still remember a very few distinct things that kind of stuck with you. And I'm sure it's probably different for everyone, but for some it might be the impressive numbers. You've heard tonight 125,000 heifers, all AI bred, in a business that spanned nearly 3 decades. Thousands and thousands of contract sale heifers were packaged to very specific details, and they were shipped to 31 states across this country. We had dozens and dozens of interns that joined us and learned from us year after year, but we also had a core group of 6 employees that spanned from 14 to 25 years of service at Heartland. I'm looking at Delbert, 25 years, isn't that awesome? And those people combined an experience of 145 years specializing in heifer development. And yes, let's not forget that for fun, in the fall season when we were breeding heifers, we weaned calves in our spare time, probably over 200,000 head of ranch fresh balling calves. That was a lot of balling. And probably the most meaningful number to Patsy was her annual customer retention rate of over 95% of her long-term heifer customers, many of whom are here tonight, and it's so great to see all of you guys here. So I think we can all agree those are certainly impressive numbers, but for other visitors that maybe aren't numbers people, you may recall more about getting the insights of this concept of professional heifer development and what that meant. You know, we talk about on our tours the receiving and then the processing and the freeze branding and the pre-breeding and the culling and the body condition scoring and the carcass ultrasound, and then we did estrus synchronization, and then we sorted and we AI'd and we preg checked, and there were so many questions from so many people. They would say, what do you feed, and where do your opens go, and when can the bred heifers ship home, and how do you bill, and what do you charge, and what the heck do you do with all of this information that you're tracking? How do you handle all of that? And so Patsy patiently, tour after tour, she answered the same questions over and over for so many people, and so many phone calls and so many visitors, and just gave back to the industry so much in that way. And yet, I think for other people, maybe it wasn't the numbers or the process so much, it was the atmosphere that made a lasting impression. Immaculate facilities so clean you could eat off the processing barn floor. And cattle so content they appeared as though they might not ever want to go back to the ranch. No stone left unturned, or in our case, no weed left unpulled and no ditch left unweed-eated, right guys? Massive size and scope, and yet the smallest of details on every single animal. And a crew so loyal and hardworking that it leaves you wondering just what kind of a mystical place this really is. And if you had the privilege to visit frequently or even unannounced, the most impressive thing of all may just be that we appeared to be tour ready 365 days a year. Although sometimes Patsy would reject a tour because the roads were muddy or the pins weren't perfect, but it wasn't a facade. That's just the kind of ship that Patsy ran. So hundreds, if not thousands of these tours came and went over the years, and I would imagine most people left Southwest Nebraska probably wondering how she pulled it off. What was the secret that she's not really telling? Most would wonder, how do you get a group of employees to put in grueling hours, month after month, 7 days a week, often volunteering to come in on their days off, and more importantly, buying into your vision and your dream to be the best that you can be? So I can tell you from experience that's nothing short of a miracle, but that's what Patsy does, right? She beats the odds. She does things that shouldn't even be feasible, much less prosperous. So I'd like to share just a couple of quick examples of how I think she might have done it. First, I see a lot of fellow coworkers and interns here. Can you guys just raise your hand really quick? I have a question for you. There's a few not raising your hands. What's the first thing you learn to do every time you walk in one of the doors of the office? You take your boots off, right? Right, I see nodding heads. Okay. Spouses and housekeepers all across McCook can thank Patsy for training us to leave your muddy boots at the back door, or you're going to be in big trouble. You might get the look, or worse yet, you might get the finger. Did you make that mess? Kind of a finger. So I know that's random, but I think it's an example of her leadership style. You always set your standards high, and then you clearly communicate your expectations. It's that simple. So I think no matter what the task or responsibility was that was given to each of us, it was always clear what needed to happen, what the expectation was, when it needed to be done, all of that. Now some would accuse her of micromanaging, but to us it was this fine line of setting these standards and these expectations, all the while giving us the individual freedom and the flexibility to figure out how best to get it done. So she created this feeling of self-ownership and the pride that we all had in her business. And I can't tell you how many times I heard her answer the question when they would push her on the crew thing. She would say, "It's easy. You surround yourself with good people, and then you get the heck out of the way." And I know her so well, and I know that wasn't an easy thing for her to do on a lot of days. But she managed to do just that. So if an image of dirty boots maybe doesn't do much for you, what if I tell you about sleepovers at the feed yard? All right, I know that's weird too, but I can recall on more than one occasion, we had an air mattress in the basement and there was a drawer of blankets, where Patsy and some of the crew or different people would stay all night at the yard during a blizzard just to make sure we were there at first light to make sure those cattle were okay and they had feed in front of them as soon as we could get the bunks cleaned. You see, if you sent your heifers to Heartland, she treated them as their own, every one of them. They were her first priority. And perhaps the greatest compliment we ever received is when an owner never set foot on the place, because that tells us that they trust us 100%. And that trust doesn't come easily, and I guarantee you she didn't take it lightly. And through all of this, Patsy was the first in line for the fun sleepovers, and also the late night heat checking, and the 4 a.m. cattle receiving, and the scooping bunks, and the pulling weeds, and just about every other crappy job you can think of at Heartland. You see, a good leader never asks anything of her crew that she wouldn't do herself. And I think we could all easily agree on these things, but here's something else I bet you didn't know about Patsy. She is an awesome cook. Like we're gonna put a full-size kitchen in our new break room kind of a cook. And if you've ever been to that break room, you would have seen this huge table and it seated 12 people. And if we had company over, we could really scrunch together and we'd get like 15 or 20 in there. But this was the Heartland version of the family dining room table. And I would imagine, like most family tables, we ate together and we brainstormed together. And in our case, we did a lot of crossword puzzles together. We laughed till we cried, and occasionally we cried till all we could do was laugh. We had birthday celebrations, and we took crew votes on really hard decisions. And we even had a few rare come to Jesus meetings when we needed them. We had end of breeding season parties because that was a big day when we were done heat checking. And we had holiday breakfast because when you come in at 4 a.m. to get your work done so you can be with your family, she couldn't let us leave hungry. And she made really awesome prime rib Christmas dinners, complete with a rice pilaf that she learned how to make when she was in California. So what does this have to do with heifer development? I believe this is the secret to how Patsy leads. She created a family. And she served us in so many ways that all we wanted to do was give back. And she taught us that thank you notes are really important and that you tell people when you appreciate them. and that sometimes the feeling of pride you get when you see your final product is reward enough for the hard work that you put in. And as I was trying to put this information together, one book, one of my favorite books, just kept coming to mind over and over, and it's Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, and it's one of my very favorites. If you're not familiar with it, I just pulled one of the key quotes. It says, "Leaders eat last is a leadership style characterized by the creation of a culture that allows workers to go home at the end of the day feeling fulfilled by the work that they do. By creating an environment of trust, teams will pull together again and again to help their tribe not just survive, but to flourish." Now, Angie sent me a preview just a couple of days ago of the video that we saw tonight, and you'll notice that our banker, Brian, also referenced this book. So of course my first thought was, gosh, dang it, Brian, you took my quote, and I'm gonna have to take it out. But I was talking to Gail, my husband, and he's like, no, I really think you need to leave that in. And so I thought about it, and then I realized he was exactly right, like he always is. How awesome is it that two of us from two completely different perspectives came up with that exact same reference to describe Patsy's leadership style. So I pulled the book out, and I looked at it, and she really is the epitome of this, but this is on, I swear, on the very front page of the book, this is what it says. "This is what it means to be a leader, going headfirst into the unknown." And isn't that what she's done here? A concept that was totally unproven. And it continues on, and it says, and when we as employees feel sure that they will keep us safe, we will march behind them and work tirelessly to see their visions come to life, and we will proudly call ourselves their followers. And I mean, that's the whole thing right there. So I can't think of a better summary statement to describe Patsy's leadership style at the helm of one of the greatest businesses that the beef industry has ever known. So thank you, Patsy, for sharing your innovation and your generosity and your work ethic and your dedication to helping ranchers one heifer at a time.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, all our speakers. I met Patsy in January 1977. I don't know where the time went. Sometime, if you get a chance, there's a wonderful song by Kenny and Dolly that says, "You can't make old friends. You make new friends." I came here in January 1977. I'd actually met Patsy earlier. She judged for K-State in the fall of '76. I judged for Purdue. And Dr. Bill Abel, wave your hand back there. Dr. Bill Abel, her judging coach in 1976. She got her master's under Bill. We've been friends a long time. And there's no one I'm prouder of to call my friend than Patsy Houghton. When I came in January '77, Twig Marston was president of Block and Bridle. Marty Veneer was secretary. Patsy was the queen. So from the queen of Block and Bridle to the name on the marquee in front of the hotel tonight, please congratulate our Stockman of the Year, Dr. Patsy Houghton.
Got those? Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh. This is an amazing evening, guys. I'm speechless. And for those of you who know me, that's virtually impossible, okay? This has just been an amazing night. I am so deeply honored this evening. And I look out across this room and I look at all the industry icons in the room, and I look at all my dear friends, I look at customers, I look at employees, and I very frankly like I said, I'm virtually speechless. But I'm mostly honored tonight by the words that have been spoken, the heartfelt, wonderful, amazing words. It's just more than I ever could have anticipated. Dave Nichols, Dave Grieger, Larry, Janet, I can't thank you guys enough. I wouldn't be here this evening without all you guys and all you've done for me over the years. You guys are all priceless friends. And let's talk a little bit about the people in the video. My gosh, Ron, right here. I lost him. Unreal. Jerry, fantastic. I tell you what, when you get a Dr. Tom compliment from a Husker, and we're talking about close personal friends with Dr. Tom here. This isn't just about football, okay? That's as good as it gets. Brian, thank you so much. Mark, thank you. Ken, Lorna, you guys, thank you so much for who you guys are, who you've been to me, and everything that you guys have done for me. So much has come from this group. And I want to thank everybody in attendance tonight. So many drove so far to be here tonight. I don't know how many states are represented here tonight, but it's a lot, guys. There's people that came across a lot of states. My friends, Warren and Carol Weibert, when they found out that this was going to happen, they were in California, and they made plane reservations just to be here tonight on my behalf. Thank you, Warren and Carol. I mean, that's a big deal. I really appreciate that. I also want to thank the people that took the time and effort to bring forth my nomination. These things don't happen on their own. It takes someone stepping out and taking the time and effort to do so. Mark Gardner, Justin Jansen, the rest of the LMIC Awards Committee. You guys will never know and understand how much I appreciate you thinking of me. I can't tell you what a privilege it is to be a part of the Stockman of the Year group. If you watch the faces and the icons that projected through here this evening, the people, the names, look at some of the early honorees, A.D. Dad Weber, Earl Brookover, Don Good, who needs absolutely no introduction in this room, all the way to some of the later honorees, Lee Bork, my good friends Sam Hands, Jerry Bone last year, and so many other deserving honorees in between. To be honest with you guys, it's all just a little surreal and overwhelming. This is absolutely amazing. I have learned so much over the last 30 years in my business experiences, and it's been quite a ride. It's been quite a ride. The satisfaction of building something unique has been immensely satisfying for me. But more important to me has been the opportunity to develop long-term relationships and friendships with the most amazing customers in the world. And the opportunity, Dave, would you bring me some water, please? The opportunity to have a role in my employees' lives and their families' lives has been so important to me. This is such a special, special group. I didn't get all the core employees here this evening because a couple of them couldn't be here for work-related reasons. But if you'd indulge me for just a minute, I'd like to recognize the people that are here this evening and introduce you to them. Delbert Kunke has been with me. Delbert, if you'd please stand, and Marilyn, you also. Delbert is here with his wife, Marilyn. Delbert has been with me at Heartland Cattle Company for 25 years. Had every skill set under the sun. Has been just a huge part of our business over the years. Gail and Janet Rippey, they didn't come as a pair, but they ended up that way. Janet came to me initially as a student intern here from Kansas State. Janet's young enough for me that we didn't know each other at Purdue. She wasn't on the campus yet. So I met her here as a master's student, reproductive physiology. Gail, I have to tell this story. So Gail, I've known Gail since he was a high school kid. Some of the research work that I did was at Decatur County Feed Yard. And Gail used to run the chute for me in those days, and then he migrated down to southwest Kansas and was working in a feed yard down there and a sheriff's office and some different things. And he calls me one day in 1997, wanted to know if we had work for him. And I tell people that his interview consisted of, when can you start? So Gail and Janet, if you'd stand along with your amazing two kids, Allie and Nate, this family is amazing. And did Janet do a good job or what? This is one of the most supremely talented individuals I've ever had the opportunity to work with. Janet could take the lead in the breeding barn 1 minute and be programming a computer the next minute, or anything in between. The width and breadth of her skill set is like nothing I've ever seen before. Thank you, Janet. Your words mean the world to me. Shannon Stevens could not be here this evening, but was with me for 19 years and was a huge part of our team. If you watch the rolling PowerPoint program this evening, Shannon was featured several times. Craig Adams also was with me for 17 years, just as Gail was. Tremendous skill set also. Craig is now working with Nebraska Bull Service and leading their IVF division, so that's a really nice opportunity for Nebraska Bull Service. And the last person that couldn't be here this evening, but his wife and daughter, Yvonne and Morgan, would you stand in Daryl's place? Daryl was with me for 14 years, and he's now in the process of becoming yard manager at Timmerman N.A. Timmerman Inc. At the McCook yard, and he couldn't make the trip here, but Daryl was also an important part of our team. This was such a special, special group of people, and there's no way that Heartland would have been the success that it was without this wonderful, wonderful group of people. And I owe them so much. And the fact that they took out of their busy lives and came here to be in Manhattan, Kansas tonight with me was huge. So I'm going to give you just a little history on Heartland Cattle Company. The idea for Heartland Cattle Company actually started when I was still on faculty with Kansas State. And it started with a 300-head heifer breeding project cooked up between partners Everett Benoit and Tom and Jerry Porter. Those of you who knew Jerry know he was probably the idea guy behind all this, and he kind of pulled the other guys in. Enter Larry Cora's AI student intern project, where he sent Tom Ritter and Mike Marker, with me as their supervisor, to Glen Elder to breed these heifers, 300 head. So you got to go back in time, guys. Nothing of this magnitude had ever been accomplished before, or even tried. We managed to accomplish it in an electric fence and a plywood breeding box. So after this project was over, my wheels started turning, and I thought, boy, what could a person do if they had a professional crew, if you had complete control of the nutritional development of these heifers, and you had a facility actually built to handle large numbers of heifers and get them bred. So fast forward to 1990, 3 potential partners, a farmer, a cattle feeder, and me with this crazy professional heifer development and research center idea. We each threw $5,000 in the pot and worked with a bank that took a huge gamble on us. I mean, we're talking huge gamble, and this is a true story. So there we are. Heartland Cattle Company is off and running. Or maybe I should say running and stumbling. That might be a better way to put it. We didn't have any money, so we had to be creative. Creative financing, we called it. And we worked every day at it because there was no money there. There's no doubt that it was a true test of nerves and physical exhaustion at that point. But that really wasn't my biggest business test. My biggest business test came in 2006 when we suddenly lost one of the partners in a car accident, and it was during a time that the finishing yards were experiencing some financial distress. So long story short, my remaining partner and I, with the bank's blessing, decided to transition ownership of the business into my sole ownership. And that was really, really a difficult time in the history of Heartland Cattle Company. But as adversity will often do for us, as time plays out, it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings of my life. It forced me to improve my leadership and business skills. I developed an even closer family relationship with my 6 long-term employees who stuck with me through all the uncertainty and hung in there with me. I developed closer relationships with my family and a number of friends and treasured mentors. Many of you are in the room tonight. You guys saw me through all the chaos. And without you, I don't think I could have made it. The net result over the last number of years for me has been a vastly improved quality of life and more business success than I ever could have imagined. This includes an unexpected opportunity to transition the heifer yard in October of 2018 to new ownership after I had been in large-scale heifer development work for over 32 years at that point in time. I had a couple other things I'd like to do, and in the next 10 to 15 years, I hope to pursue a couple of educational-based business opportunities that I've held for a number of years but never had the opportunity to pursue. So that's what's on tap for me in the future. So what are a few of the lessons I've learned over the last 30 years? I've learned quite a bit. I've learned adversity will test you. It's our greatest teacher. Embrace it and learn from it. I've learned in the world of ideas, it's enthusiasm that's most important, but in the real world, it's persistence and perseverance that will see you through. I've learned being a food producer is challenging, but it's also a very, very fulfilling career. As you heard in the LMIC video, it's a noble thing to help feed a hungry world. And there's no better people to be surrounded with while you're heeding your life's calling than people involved in agriculture. We need to be proud of our profession. We need to shout our story from the rooftops. I think that's very important. I've learned it was a flipping miracle that any bank in the world ever backed Heartland Cattle Company when there was only an untried and unproven concept on the table with absolutely $0 to back the idea. Unbelievable. Couldn't happen today, in today's world. At that time, they took a gamble on the people involved. I've learned when you start a capital-intensive business, labor-intensive business, it's 100% leveraged, and you don't have very much business experience, you will go head-to-head with your banker at times, even if you are good friends. And I might just mention that when we started this project and Brian and I started working together, I had long hair, and he had hair. So, sorry, Brian. I've learned you can talk yourself out of any opportunity. Sometimes there's value in not overthinking it. Janet and I have to work at that quite a bit. We tend to overthink things a little bit. It's true, I really was naive about how hard it would be to get this business off the ground. But you know what? Today I'm glad I was, because had I really understood it, had I really realized it, I might never have tried. So I think that's a big deal. I've learned that blessed be the flexible, for they never get bent out of shape. That's something I've learned. I've learned successful business models are based on solving someone else's problem. Very simply put, Heartland Cattle Company existed to solve our customers' problems cost effectively. In our case, it was largely to manage a time-consuming problem set of females to free up time for a rancher and ranch grass resources so he could handle more mature producing cows. That's really the basis of what that whole business was about. You heard Jerry say in the video presentation, that's actually why he called me in 1991. It wasn't about to get the heifers bred, he needed more space. And so this was a big part of what we were all about. And Jerry, I didn't know you were going to tell that story, so that fit into my comments perfectly. Thank you for that. I promise you, if you solve your customers' problems, you will never have a shortage of return business. They'll be back year after year after year after year. I've learned there's givers and takers in this world. If you surround yourself with a business team of givers that complement your strengths and weaknesses, you can't help but succeed. I've learned there's something unique that binds those of us in agriculture together, particularly those of us in animal agriculture. Why do we feel a sense of family in this room when others do not? I think it's the shared experience of caring for living beings in the worst and best of circumstances. The brutal heat, the mind-numbing cold, the droughts, the blizzards. But it's also the opportunity to take care of livestock in that warm, gentle mid-May breeze that we can all know and understand and have the opportunity to do. It's the family table we all gathered around when we were kids growing up in old farmhouses. These are the moments and the shared experience that bind all of us together as family. I think that's why we have the event that we have every fall in October. It's why the Animal Science Department can bring in the people that we do when other departments wouldn't be able to get that done. I think it's a big deal. I've learned I was really lucky to be raised as a ranch kid by great parents. To have instilled in me a reverence for the land and for life. To know the sense of satisfaction after a long day's work, no matter what Mother Nature might have thrown at us that day. My message is, if you're not in a position to raise your kids or grandkids on a ranch, raise your kids with ranch values. I think it's something that's missing in our world today. I've learned there's nothing more important than family and friends. Business success, recognition, financial success, none of those things compare. It's your family and friends who are there for you during the difficult moments when there's nothing in it for them other than to help you through a rough patch. I've learned that I am so thankful for my affiliation with K-State's Department of Animal Science and Industry. From my undergraduate days all the way through my LMIC board member days, I wouldn't trade a minute of it. I firmly believe the college experience should be about teaching students how to think, not what to think. And even though it seems many in academia have lost track of this, I think the K-State Animal Sciences and Industry Group continued to teach important critical thinking skills just about better than anybody else in the country. And it shows up every day throughout our industry, and here's an example. My Cornhusker friend Jerry Keneally called me one day several years ago, a couple years after he joined the Angus board, and he said he didn't realize how many K-Staters were in leadership positions across the country. He said, my gosh, Patsy, he said, they're everywhere. I don't know, like we were locusts or something, you know? But it's so true. Look around our industry. Just over the past 50 years, you'd be hard-pressed to find more leaders originating from any other program. I want to personally thank my teachers, mentors, and friends in the Animal Sciences Department for the great job you have done and continue to do. You guys and ladies rock. Thank you very much for everything that you do. Okay, so to complete the evening, I'm going to ask you all to participate in a little audience participation exercise, okay? So cooperate with me here. I think it'll be instructive. Many of you are going to fit several of these categories, but the first category that it fits, I want you to stand and stay standing, please, if you would, until we get done and I ask you to take your seats again. Okay? So here we go. If you were a classmate and friend during my undergraduate or graduate school days at K-State, would you please stand? Ann and Jim, Marty, Lori, Galen, oh, there's all kinds of people out here. If you ever taught me in class, served as my student advisor, served on a graduate student committee on my behalf, or recommended me for any type of recognition, would you please stand? If you were part of the 80s KSU Beef Cattle Extension Team with me, Larry Cora, Gary Cool, Denny Sims, Scott Laudert, Frank Brazel, Dale Blossy, you guys were so great and welcomed me into the fold when you didn't have to. Thank you so much. If you ever welcome me onto your ranch or into your feed yard to conduct research, synchronize and breed your heifers, or hold any other type of KSU-based program, would you please stand? Okay. Where's my friend the Steelos? There they are. So go ahead and stand up, guys. If you were with me today, I unrolled the initial blueprints on the hood of the state pickup in the West Loop Pizza Hut parking lot. Dave Nichols, Galen Fink, Gene Barrett, you guys were the first ones to hear about this crazy idea. Thank you. That was a fun day. If you ever help finance or ever encourage my crazy professional heifer development and research center idea in any way, please stand. Thank you, Dave. Now listen to this one all the way through. Don't just jump up. If you ever worked for Heartland Cattle Company when you were 14 years of age or younger, Ben, Adam, Allie, Nate, Jackson. Ben and Adam's brother Cody also fits this category. He couldn't be here this evening, but he started at 11. But I got to tell you, Adam wins this category. He started working for me when he was 8 years old. And again, and look what he's done. Restaurateur by age 25, and he's the one who brought the steaks tonight. So everybody has got to like Adam. If you were ever a Heartland Cattle Company advisor, Jeff Stevenson, or consultant, Shane Terrell, full-time employee, part-time employee, or student intern, please stand. If you're a Heartland Cattle Company customer, or if you ever encouraged your customers or your neighbors to give Heartland a try. Here's one that half the room could stand up. If I ever bent your ear about my next latest, greatest idea. Glenda, you got to stand up on this one. If you currently serve with me, or have ever served with me on the LMIC board, the ASNI Family and Friends Committee, or helped in any way with family and friends, including faculty, staff, students, and sponsors, please stand. And last but not least, my two brothers, my sister, and their spouses, Keith and Deb. I think you're back in the corner somewhere. Leon, where's Leon? There he is. Kathy and Steve, they're back there, right back there. You guys are my best friends and biggest cheerleaders. Thank you. I couldn't have made through everything without your support and encouragement. I love you guys, and you guys are just the best. Thank you. So look around before everybody sits down. This is instructive. Look at how many people are standing in the room this evening. Okay, you guys can sit down now. Besides a few influential individuals in my life who couldn't attend tonight's banquet for one reason or another, the most important people who couldn't be here this evening are my parents. I so wish Mom and Dad could have been here this evening, but I have a sneaking suspicion they're smiling right now, and they're pretty darn proud of their family tonight. So as we looked around the room a moment ago, I believe it's all the people who were standing, plus those who couldn't be here this evening, who are the ones we're truly honoring tonight. I fully understand that no one achieves success alone, and it's with my deepest gratitude that I humbly accept this beautiful award on their behalf. I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Please travel safe as you go home this evening, and go Cats.
Well, we've got one more thing to do. Please be seated. Mark and Dr. Day, if you will join Patsy in front of the stage, present her with the 2020 Stockman of the Year plaque. Congratulations, Patsy.